hopefully they can catch up here with us pretty soon. So I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, we're live.
All right. Well, good afternoon. I'm Lisa Keohokalole Schauer, and I am one of the co-facilitators for the Community Advisory Group with the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. We are excited to start our March meeting, and we hope that we'll have a few other folks join us today. We know the sunshine is hard to compete against today. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with our opening instructions. Today's meeting is in closed captions, both English and in Spanish. If you want to go ahead and advance to the next slide. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube, and users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. Our meeting participation tips, we appreciate you joining us today. We ask that you join either by audio, join audio by either phone or computer, but not both. And we encourage our panelists to turn on your video so that we can see you and we're able to interact. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact our program staff at 360-329-6744. Our access to closed captions can be done by using the bottom middle of your screen and looking for the menu of options. If you can't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen, click on the CC icon, and a separate window will appear. We have ASL interpretation. We're happy to have our interpreters here. Each of our meetings, in an effort to continue to center equity. To make sure that the interpreter is always visible, please right-click on your video and select Spotlight Video. For those watching on YouTube, when we screen share, you'll be able to see the slideshow, closed captioning, and the ASL interpreter. So we do ask that those that are in the space, if you would just continue to share with us your feedback, feel free to introduce yourself if you haven't already done so when you're speaking. We will pull down the slides in order to have a conversation when there are moments when the community advisory group are interacting without the need for the slides to be up. All right, next slide is public input instructions. We always welcome and encourage our public to engage and to share feedback with our community advisory group. We anticipate this will be at 5:45 today. Verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during this designated time with the option to turn on your web camera. If you are missing this opportunity but still have feedback that you want to share, we ask that you either reach out via email or comment by leaving a message or by phone. In order to comment by phone this afternoon during our public input, please feel free to dial 1-669-900-6833 or 1-408-638-0968. We'll repeat these instructions and how to provide input as we get closer to 5:45 this afternoon. All right, our meeting agenda will do meeting overview, introductions and check-in, program update. We'll dive into some visualizations and get some feedback. We'll do a follow-up on the Hayden Island Transit Station. We didn't have much time at the last meeting. We want to make sure that we are moving so fast that we miss feedback that'll be valuable to our design team as they continue to move these designs forward. And then we will have a presentation on the workforce study, which is really exciting. We'll have some folks with us to go ahead and lead us through that presentation. We'll open up for public comment. So at this time, it looks like my co-facilitator, Johnell Bell, has entered the space. So I'd love for you to just be able to say hello, and then we'll pass it over to our co-chairs. Johnell?
Great, thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the sunshine that we're having, which is always an indication that spring is on the way. Looking forward to today's discussion.
Great, thanks, Johnell. All right, as we get started and we engage in a dialogue, we always want to make sure that we're remembering and keeping in mind our commitments to this meeting space. And those include putting relationships first, keeping focused on our common goal, noticing power dynamics in the room, creating a space for multiple truths and norms, being kind and brave, examining racially biased systems and processes, and we're always looking for opportunities for learning. With that, I will pass this on over to our two co-chairs, Ed Washington and Lynn Valenter, for a welcome. So we'll go ahead and take the slides down and have you, actually there's CAG sharing, so maybe have you look at the next slide and then open it up to the rest of the group. Lynn and Ed?
Ed, do you want to go first? Or I can go first.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, please proceed.
I just stuck a big piece of candy in my mouth. Just like to welcome everybody here today. It's a wonderful, beautiful afternoon. I'm in my office at Portland State, and I'm looking right out at Mount Hood from the 8th floor. I wish we were outside having our meeting, but welcome to all of you. Look forward to the rest of the evening. Lynn?
Thank you. And if our members can start by down where there's the reactions, if you click on that, you can raise your hand. So for the CAG members, if you raise your hand, we'll take turns, just tag you're it. Once you get done, please share your name, organizational affiliation or at-large status, pronouns. And then the check-in question today is, what's your superpower? So feel free to be as creative as you do or don't want, but at this point, I'm going to ask to take down the slide, and I will call on my first colleague / victim. And I'm going to pick on Jana to start us off. I'm stepping outside the norm. So Jana, will you start us off?
Oh my goodness, I've never been first. So there you go.
I know.
I'm Jana Jarvis, President and CEO of the Oregon Trucking Association. And I would tell you all that my superpower is the ability to find a parking spot wherever I am, which my husband really appreciates.
And then you get to tag the next person, Jana.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought you were going to be calling. Irene, you are at the top of my list. So how about you next?
Okay, I'm the next victim. My name is Irina Phillips, and I represent East European Coalition. It's the immigrants from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and other former Soviet republics. And I use she, her pronouns. And my superpower, at least my kids think that I always know when people are lying. So kind of like, I know when they're telling truth and when not telling truth. And the next I'm calling Michaela.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Williams. I am an at-large community member representing the Washington side of the bridge. I really struggled with this topic. My superpower, I guess maybe it probably has something to do with like my smartphone. Like I feel like I'm pretty like keen on my ability to utilize technology. I will go ahead and call on Martha.
Martha Wiley. I'm a member at large with a focus on transit and particularly paratransit, and she, her, and my superpower is gardening. Not that I garden so well, but I love it so much. so it makes me really happy, and I guess that's a superpower. I don't know. And I will pick on Julie next.
Okay, hi. So I'm Julie. I'm a community member at large for the North and Northeast Portland area. and I use she, her pronouns. And the first thing that came to mind for superpower was I have a lot of energy. I wouldn't say I'm like, a marathon runner or anything, but I do have kind of like a bottomless pit of interest in a variety of different areas. And I just really, really love being busy and learning all kinds of new things. And then let's see here. For the next person, how about Sam?
Well, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Sam Kim. I was originally a super commuter to Hillsborough, now to Olympia at Maple Park next to Department of Transportation, where Frank Green is headquartered, I think. So we're neighbors practically. My superpower is just like Michaela, is I've been a technologist all my life. So if you ask me any questions about any technology, I probably either have an answer or know who might have the answer. So our biggest, most exciting stuff that's happening is, of course, generative artificial intelligence. And no, I'm not an avatar. I'm a real person. I want to pick Dina Horton.
Thanks, Sam. I'm Dina Horton. I'm Government Relations Director for PNWA on the committee as a person representing river users and multimodal freight users. She, her pronouns. I would have to say, at least I think everyone else would say my superpower is cooking. They all seem to love my food. I think my superpower is that I do a lot of my best writing between like 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning on a lot of caffeine at the same time. So a couple of superpowers there. I will call on Ryan.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ryan Webb. I am the Engineering and Planning Manager for the Confederated Tribes at Grand Ronde, and this project is within our ceded lands. I would say that my superpower is probably along similar lines to being able to find a parking spot, but I think mine is being able to parallel park in any shape or size spot. I feel pretty confident that I can always make it fit. And I will call on Zachary next.
Hey folks, Zachary Lauritsen, he, him. I'm at Oregon Walks. We are a pedestrian advocacy organization. My superpower may surprise you, but I think I may be in the top 1,000, 2,000 people in the world at roasting marshmallows. So if you're ever interested, just let me know. I'll go make a fire, get you some marshmallows. Tom?
Thank you, Zach. Tom Sandmore here, CPC. I'm stuck in a bus near the I-5 traffic coming from Richfield to Portland. Actually, you can't see the virtual background. I can't remember the song, but that superpower, I would say, good at staying calm in most situations because it's just how I was born. So consider being a superpower. Other than that, I represent our college, half of Dr. Brandon versus the president, Oregon resident who works in Washington, so kind of commute both ways every day, represents the both sides. Not sure if anyone's hand is up, so I think back to Lisa.
Thanks, Tom. I think Jay, I didn't see your hand up. Did you already introduce yourself? Do you want to? No, you don't want to. No, or Lynn, I'm.
Sorry, I guess I clapped.
That's okay. Clapping's good.
I'm Jay Clark. I am the Director of Public Affairs for the Portland Business Alliance. And I guess my superpower is my attention to detail sometimes is really scary. My ability to observe everything around me and pick up every little thing is a blessing and a curse. So I would call that my superpower.
The only other person, Haley, did you want to introduce yourself? Certainly don't need to, but I think you may be on as well. Okay. All right, well, Lynn or Ed, do either of you want to share? before we move on?
Sure, I will. I didn't have any, so listening to all my extremely talented fellow committee members was inspiring. I have a superpower in that I sleep well. I'm the only person I know. I need to sleep. I sleep a solid 6 hours every night. I don't need a lot of sleep, but I am out and I sleep deep and hard. So that's my superpower. Ed, you want to share one?
Sure. Well, it's sort of a superpower and a weakness is inability to eat only a couple of cookies when someone gives you a nice batch of cookies. And co-chair Lynn Valenter at Christmas time brought me a wonderful package of cookies by the house with a nice card and a couple of photos of her and some of her friends. And I started eating the cookies. And I ate half of the first day and finished up the other. So I tell you, to all of you, and I'm surely not trying to put her on the spot, she makes great cookies. I mean, they were good. So that my superpower is my weakness. I swear, I could not stop eating the cookies. They were gone in about 3 days. So, and other than that, it's such a pleasure to work with all of you and Lynn especially. She's a wonderful person and I enjoy working with her, and I'm looking forward to see my birthday just passed. I didn't tell her it was my birthday, but if you got any late birthday cookies hanging around your house, Lynn, I'll take them. Thank you.
That's awesome, Ed. And Sam's now hungry for cookies. So just an alert there, Lynn. Perhaps our next in-person, you can bring cookies. So with that, I think it's time to transfer over to Frank Green, our Assistant Program Administrator, for a program update. All right, Frank.
Can you guys hear me? My thing says muted, but it's not. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. No, thank you, everyone. Frank Green, once again, Assistant Program Administrator, and Sam. I work from Vancouver, but yes, we are headquartered in Olympia. So anyway, but I know we don't usually give our superpowers, but I was going to say use of Excel spreadsheets. But then I realized that's really maybe not a superpower, so maybe sarcasm then, since I was saying that. But once again, no. I'm filling in for Greg. Greg has the opportunity today to be acknowledged and recognized by the Michigan chapter of WTS for a lot of the work that he did when he was working there, which is a great opportunity and great acknowledgement for some of the work that Greg has led in his career. And so we're really happy that he's being acknowledged for that. And so I'll do my best to fill in for him as I walk through the project update. So if you can go to the next slide, please. One of the things that I know we like to say is that, having an opportunity to engage with the program, either through a tour or coming into the office, I think it continues to be one of the best ways for people to get educated on the program. And in the last month we've had the opportunity to host an event with Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. It was a really good 2 days that over the course of 2 days that we had the opportunity to engage with him. Part of it was celebrating the 107th birthday of the northbound bridge, but the secretary, really did look forward to some of the equity work that the program's been doing. There was an opportunity to have an equity roundtable that I know some of the members of this advisory group and other advisory groups had the opportunity to attend. Some of the messages he gave us was that, really appreciating how this bi-state program is putting an effort and a focus on the community and engagement and equity. While also obviously still acknowledging that this is an important, bi-state connection and bridge, but that replacing a bridge is about community, and I think the roundtable event had the opportunity to highlight that. But as I mentioned, we in the last I think some of this was this week. We had the opportunity with our community-based organizations, some of the mini grants that the program's been able to put out there. We had an opportunity for a tour. You know, I know we've been on a tour with several members of this group to show the program site, but then also a press conference that gave the opportunity for you know, some engagement directly with the program, with those community-based organizations, but also you know, some of the members and journalists that serve equity priority communities. And you know, one of the big focuses is what is the project, but also we have this draft supplemental environmental impact statement that will be published, you know, later this year, that, you know, we're really wanting to make sure we get out there and show the opportunities for people to have their voices be heard on this program. You know, the last bullet on this list, you know, I might change the course a little bit from when we prepared these slides, but you know, one of the most recent events on the program, if you've seen the news, on Monday, Governor Kotek announced a stop to Oregon's implementation of regional tolling program. You know, it was very clear in that message that it's not intended to impact collection of tolls for this program. We know tolling is going to remain a key piece of funding this program. And if I think we may have said this in one of the early meetings, but with the regional tolling that ODOT was proposing for this program, it had been identified that ODOT would be the operator of tolls. But, you know, a lot of that work was being done in coordination with WashDOT throughout development of the work. And so, you know, with this announcement on Monday, we started the process to transition the administration of tolling to WashDOT. You know, WashDOT does have a you know, experience and a kind of a mature tolling program in the Puget Sound area. And so while we know there's a lot of questions that might be out there about what this transition means, you know, we feel pretty confident that, you know, we'll be able to make the transition, and you know, as we're able to answer some of the questions about what the true transition means, we'll make sure to make those answers available. However, you know, as we've said, I think the policy for tolling and how the rates will be set, you know, that authority has always lied within the two transportation commissions, not necessarily the DOTs. And those commissions had created a bi-state tolling subcommittee, which was the initial intent of these slides, was to walk this group through that committee. You know, our expectation is there is a meeting tomorrow amongst that group. The first meeting of that subcommittee was late last month. You know, I think there will be obviously conversation tomorrow about this change in tolling administrator, but ultimately the rate setting and policy discussion between the two commissions is still required for tolling on IBR. So if you can go to the next slide. I wanted to be able to touch upon what is that subcommittee, what's their purpose, you know, frequency of meetings, and how you know, the community can engage with them. And so right now there's two identified commissioners from each of the Oregon Transportation Committee and the Washington Transportation Committee. As I mentioned, this group will hold a monthly public meeting where they have conversations about you know, what are the policies, how are those policies move. There will be opportunities for the community to provide, you know, input to that group. And, you know, as of right now, they are meeting monthly, with the next meeting being tomorrow. If you can go to the next slide. And, you know, right now, the way that subcommittee is going to work is that toll rates and policies must be adopted by a majority of each state's commission. And in order for each state's commission to, you know, look at what those policies and those rates are, the subcommittee needs to have a majority of those four subcommittee members agreeing to send it to each one of their full commissions. You know, as we had previously said, we think this work, you know, will take place over the course of the next, you know, 18 months or so. But we also know that this change on Monday may modify their schedule a little bit, and they'll be probably talking about that tomorrow. But you know, it needs to comply with both both states' requirements for any laws that have been passed, covenants, and requirements for really looking to generate sufficient revenue to meet the funding that we're looking for within the program. So if you can go to the next slide, I think, yeah, here we go. And I know I've said policy, but the question is when you say what are all those detailed items that will be out there. Toll rates right now by time of day and payment method are some of the conversations they'll be having. How do trucks get tolled as they're going across the bridge? Are there certain hours that tolling would be incorporated with? Over the course of how long tolls may be collected, is there an escalation in the rate? And we know one of the conversations that I'm sure the community will be interested in is, are there any potential discounts or any exemptions for different kinds of users? And as you can see on the bubble on the right, we know that the policies and rates really have that expectation of being set 6 to 8 months before tolling begins. We had been anticipating that we would be doing what we call pre-completion tolling, which is, really once we start construction, we would see a toll coming on. And that's why I said the course of the commission's work, just so people weren't worried, it's not going to happen over the course of the next few months. And so there is some time if you're a community member and you're interested in engaging with the commission. So I believe that's my last slide. I see there's a few hands up. So I was going to say, Lisa, if I'm okay to ask, I think Jana, you're the first one I saw with the hand up. So if you'd like to ask a question, I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you. I appreciate the overview. In Oregon, we have a constitutional requirement that cars and trucks pay their fair share, which is somewhat unique to the state. And it comes into play not only in what we're charged on the weight mile tax rates, which have been out of whack for a number of years, but it also comes into play when we're looking at tolling rates. And that was when we were looking at all the congestion pricing within on the Portland side, on the Oregon side of the river. The factors are different that comes into play, changes what tolling can look like for trucks in Oregon versus what they look like across the country and other states. So my question is, and something that I don't know that anyone has an answer on it today, but we need to look into it, is what will how will that play into the kind of toll rates that can be implemented on a bridge that crosses between Washington that does not have that requirement and Oregon that does?
Yeah, I don't have a specific answer to that question, but that is one of the things that the two commissions have to really look into is as I mentioned, we know if there is a statute or a law in one state that the two commissions have to take that into account as they're developing the policy for this program with the bi-state nature of it. And so, yeah, I don't have the direct answer to your specific question, but I would say that as we've said, we know the commissions are aware that there may be different laws, different statutes, different requirements that have to be considered. And so I don't have, we'll have to come back with that specific answer once maybe they're able to talk about that in their subcommittee work. But appreciate the question.
Well, thanks,
as I
Frank.
said, there may be more questions right now than we have answers to, especially as when it refers to what the work the commission may be doing over the course of the next several months or year, and as well as what the transition means. But we'll definitely write that one down, and as they talk about it, we can connect with you.
Well, I appreciate that. When you brought that topic up, it made me think that there had been some discussion along that line. So that's why I went ahead and asked the question today.
It hadn't gotten to that level of detail. I know there was the two different administrations may have a different way of measuring truck, but it didn't get to the policy level yet. There hadn't been conversations at that level of detail. So there will be more to come there. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Zachary?
Thanks for that overview. I appreciate it. I'm not sure I quite have the question formulated, but I think it'll get you at least a point where maybe you can answer it, which is, you know, the project is more than just a bridge project, right? There's multiple interchanges on each side. And so it's a multi-part question. So one is, you know, some of the work will be south of the bridge on the Oregon side, which presumably we've been partially paid through by tolls. But if with the Governor Kotek's announcement, how does that interplay when she has made that announcement? Is she saying with an exception of 1.5 miles south of the bridge or not? So I guess I'm curious if there's an answer to that, or if that's something that you're working on. And the second one is around, are there multiple, or is the plan to have multiple gantries along the way? Or is it really just going to have one toll point on the bridge itself? Because then I'm thinking about people who are living, let's say, in Vancouver and are benefiting from all these changes, but are paying no tolls because they aren't actually going across the bridge, or someone on the south side in Portland with the same situation where people going across the bridge are basically bearing the financial burden for folks who on either end. And maybe that's okay. Philosophically, you could have that conversation, but I'm just trying to better understand it.
Yeah, no, those two good questions. You know, I do think that one of the pieces of the governor's announcement is that I think Oregon and ODOT will need to look at some potential other revenue sources for some of those other projects that we're looking to have tolls fund them, like 205 or, you know, other potential pieces like that. You know, as far as our program goes, we've been identifying a number of sources. You know, right now there's been $1 billion committed from each legislature. We were looking for tolls to run, you know, in the $1.25 billion range to provide revenue. We have a number of federal grants we're pursuing, and so you know, right now the program was anticipating, you know, a kind of a single toll point on the bridge with some of the proposed investments that are, you know, like you said, north and south of the bridge, you know, potentially funded by those other sources, and the bridge investment grant, the tolls might be, you know, the funding that specifically for the bridge itself, and then some of those state identified sources or other potential sources funding, you know, the transit element and some of those interchanges. And so, you know, as we get a clearer picture of where we're at with those funding sources, we will have an updated finance plan that'll do a little better job than I just did of showing, you know, where the potential funding sources will be funding within the program. And, you know, when I say when we get a clearer picture, we're actually still working on hearing back from our federal partners on a bridge investment program grant that we've submitted. You know, we've submitted an application for $1.5 billion with that, you know, to go along with the $600 million we got from MEGA a few months ago. So it is a good question, and an updated finance plan will later this summer, when we update that finance plan, we'll be able to better say where each bucket of that money is really being spent within the program. And Sam?
Hey, Frank. Yeah, so my duty station is Brush Prairie, Washington. So, but anyway, maybe see you in Olympia one of these days. So I have Good to Go in Washington State, which is the toll transponder. The only tolling places I'm aware of in Oregon are the Bridge of Gods and the Hood River Bridge. And I've always paid cash there. I don't know if Good to Go actually works there or not. So is the intent for this tolling to work with Good to Go, or do I have to get a second transponder? I don't know if you know that answer yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I would say even when ODOT was administering it, we were looking to have the ability for those folks who do have Good to Go to have that be able to be usable and have that kind of interconnected system. You know, obviously with this transitioning to WashDOT administering it, it's very likely to be a Good to Go type system that will be used. And so as we further those details and solidify them, you know, we can more definitely say yes. But I mean, it's highly likely, since that's what WashDOT uses and will be administering it, that if you have a Good to Go transponder now, it'll be usable in this location.
As a proud Washingtonian, thank you.
Well, it still would have been usable if ODOT was, you know, we were working on that ability. But yes, it's likely to be branded Good to Go at this point, and you know, more information as we know more details. But yes.
Those were lots of questions for you. Frank.
Yeah, and I'm sure, you know, there might be a ton of additional questions as this goes on. And like I said, we're happy to get them and be as transparent as we can. And as we know more, we'll make sure everyone else knows it as well. So I think with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Lisa.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, we're going to actually shift on over to visualizations with our design manager, Shilpa, who's been with us before. Glad to have you in the space and to dive into these visualizations.
Hey, thank you, Lisa. Hello, everybody. Shilpa Mallam, design manager. I'm going to go through some visualizations that we developed to help give a scale of like what we might be looking at from both shorelines in Oregon and Washington. Next slide, please. So, well, I just want to also mention that we have a couple of videos on our website, and we developed these videos, the first series of videos to help people understand how the proposed improvements will change the way that we use the interchange and the interchanges and the translation system compared to what exists today. We have two videos. One is to explain what's happening in Oregon with the roadway, the transportation system, and the interchange improvements. And we have one for Washington showing the interchanges and transportation system in Washington. The team is also working on developing similar videos for active transportation for people who walk, bike, and roll, as well as transit videos. So hopefully we'll be able to show that and share it with you as well as the community soon. Next slide, please. A couple of things before we go to the actual visualization graphics we have today. The images that I'm going to go through show 3 different bridge types based on the 3 configurations that are being studied in the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. As Frank mentioned, we'll be looking at, I guess, releasing that this spring. And that is the single level bridge, the double level bridge, and the movable span. I just want to note that the images that we showed today are not meant for decision making or narrowing of options. It is to give us an idea of the scale of the investments that we'll be looking at with the bridge. The technical analysis that will compare the trade-offs between the bridge configuration. The technical analysis will compare the trade-offs between the 3 bridge configurations, and that will be in the draft SEIS. And we'll have a 60-day comment period once the draft is released to get public comment and feedback on not just these options, but the entire document. And a decision regarding a final bridge configuration is expected to be made in 2024, later this year, before the start of the final supplemental EIS and the amended record of decision. Then the consideration to determine the bridge type will occur after a decision on the bridge configuration is made. So with that, thank you. We're looking at the bridge configuration, or we will be looking at the bridge configuration from 4 different viewpoints. We have 2 in Oregon and 2 in Washington. So the next series we'll be looking at, as you can see on the map, north is to the right. So we have Washington, the right side, Oregon to the left, the bridge in the middle. The yellow pointer that we see is one of the viewpoints that we pick, so we can look at how the bridge might look. Next slide, please. So again, this is on Hayden Island, west side of the bridge, and we are looking at how the bridge might look if a double deck bridge configuration is implemented or is adopted. You can see the transit, the catenary cables that you see, those are the cables that would be used for light rail system. And then you can see the double deck bridge more towards the left side of the image here. So it is expected to be larger. We'll see the impacts on both sides of the river. Again, the new bridge will carry transit, automobiles, as well as active transportation. Next slide, please. This is looking at the same viewpoint, but looking at the bridge if it were single level bridge configuration. Again, you can see transit on the west side, and in a minute we'll go to the east side, so we can see the active transportation also. But again, we're looking at again, this is just conceptual about how the piers might look like for transit as well as the roadway. Looking at it from Hayden Island. Next slide. And thank you. This is the third bridge configuration, which is a movable span. So towards the left, you can see the towers and see how the bridge might look like when the bridge is lifted to allow for the river users. And it's everything else is similar to, or what we're looking over here is similar to what we looked at for the single level bridge configuration with the transit and automobiles. Next slide, please. And so we will be looking at visualizations now from the east side, again on Hayden Island, east side of the bridge, and we're looking north from the shared use path this time. Next slide, please. So this is again the double deck bridge configuration, and I might repeat that a couple more times. So we'll be looking at double deck configuration first with these images. Next would be the single level, and the third one would be the movable span. So looking at active transportation, the shared use path on the east side, the double deck automobiles will be on top. So this is going to be a separate, completely separate pathway for people to walk, bike, roll, etc. Next slide, please. And this is a view if it were a single level bridge configuration, not single bridge. We have an example here of an extra dose bridge. And again, you can see the transit on the left side, which would be the west side. Next slide, please. This again is a movable span, and the view that we see here is how it would look like when the bridge is open. Again, a single level configuration. Next slide, please. Now, those were the views from Oregon. We're looking at the views from Washington side. And this is west of the bridge again, looking at the bridge from the waterfront. Here we can also, in the left side, we can see the Port of Vancouver development area. This is looking at the double deck configuration of the bridge. You can see the transit on the lower level this side, and automobiles will be on the upper level. We can also see the ramp, the active transportation ramp, coming down to meet with the active transportation connections we have in Vancouver today. Next slide, please. This is the single level bridge configuration. Again, extra dose like we saw in the previous one. Again, you can also see the active transportation connecting down to the waterfront area. Next slide, please. This is the mobile span, a lift bridge, which you can see on the right side, and similar to the single level bridge configuration, we have the ramp from the active transportation that we can see on the left side. Next slide, please. And these are the final set of visualizations we have today, which is looking at the bridge from Vancouver from the east side. Next slide. Again, double level bridge. You can also see the ramp on the active transportation ramp on the right side. Here connecting to Apple Tree Park and the Fort Vancouver area. In next slide, we'll see the single level bridge configuration with extra dosed again as an example. A slightly different, we expect to see slightly different ramps between the double level configuration and the single level configuration for active transportation ramps. And you see an example of that between the previous slide and this slide. And then I think the last one that we have, the last slide we have is the single level movable span lift bridge that you can see on the left side. Now, went through that really quick, and there's a lot of repetition, but happy to answer any questions. Okay.
You have several.
Yes. Lisa, would you, should I just?
Go ahead. Yes.
Actually, okay.
Happy to
I
support.
think
Go
I
ahead.
see Sam first on my screen.
Well, Shilpa, thank you so much. These are beautiful concepts. Really, I mean, this is becoming real, right? And construction is going to start, I feel like, imminently. So this is so exciting. What I was hoping for, and the reason why I was such an advocate for the double deck, is I was hoping that the pedestrian and bicycle path would be on the lower deck, which it is, but it would be covered by the upper deck. Seems like that's not in the plan. Is that correct?
It is still in the plan for the double deck. So I'm trying, let me clarify the question. So you're saying with the double deck, we'll have the active transportation in the lower level with automobiles on the upper level, right?
Well,
and that is still, okay.
Okay. So what's the plan then? The automobiles will be on the upper deck, is that right?
That's correct. So,
In both
so we'll have
directions?
in both directions. So again, we're looking at, for all these options, we're looking at 2 bridges, whether it's single level or double level. And the southbound bridge will carry the southbound traffic on the upper level with the transit on the lower level. And the northbound bridge will be carrying automobiles on the upper level with active transportation on the lower level. We just, yeah.
So,
we might have
and Sam, I was going to jump in. All the views that you saw, though, where you were on the active transportation alignment, they were off the bridge because the alignment for the active transportation on the bridge would be under the deck, but once it gets off the bridge, it would peel out. And so that's where, like, even in the double deck active transportation, you saw it looked at a different level. And if you look at it, it actually was going to go under the bridge. So it's only really over the river where you'd be, quote unquote, covered.
Of
I
course.
think is.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm assured now of my advocacy for a double decker.
Okay. Thanks, Frank, and thanks, Sam. Next, Martha.
Yeah, I may be jumping the gun here, but do you have any ideas about the diameter of the piers that are on land on both the Oregon and Washington side? Because one time, a long time ago, we had a field visit with Greg, and he said those pillars were going to be 30 feet in diameter. Is that still something you're working on, or is that something you don't really know right now?
We don't have that level of design right now. We're pretty much still in the conceptual stage for like environmental phase. So I don't have any information.
All right.
About.
And how about the height of the bridge on both the Oregon side and the Washington side at the river? How much space will there be between the ground and the bottom of the bridge?
So it's going to vary between the different options that we saw here, but in general, we're looking at, for the fixed span, we're looking at 116 feet in the middle of the river. And while coming down, I don't have the exact height for you, but we know it's going to be higher than what we have today because on the Vancouver side, we know it's going to be higher than what is out there today because we need to go over the railroad. Today, the interstate goes under, so it's going to be over the railroad, I know about 20, 30 feet, and then land to the existing ground just north of the railroad. In the Oregon side, also we might be seeing more of the fill or bridge like we saw in some of these figures. Can we go back to maybe one of the figures, please, the presentation, just to help with this? It is going to be higher with the way for us to be able to maintain the 116 feet. Oops. Thank you. Can we go to Oregon side, just as an example, please? So I guess in the other ones, we could see the difference in Vancouver and yeah, so it's going to be something like this. Like you also see there's a difference between the double deck bridge versus a single level bridge. It might be a little different again with the single level movable span, but again, we had the same challenge on the Vancouver side is to go above the railroad. So it's going to be higher than what we see there today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dina?
Thanks. I appreciate hearing a little bit more on the bridge height. That's helpful for us who use the river. Curious too, I'm sure these are all just very, very preliminary, just wanting to make sure that we're also taking, mental health and safety into account and ensuring that there's, safety measures in place so people don't have, it's not as easy to jump off the bridge or to jump into the areas where there could be traffic or into the transit areas. I think that's something that we should all care about, and because we want our community to be a safe community, and we want traffic to be able to move, and we want people to be able to get to places safely. So I'm hoping that as you're kind of fleshing out these designs, that we'll see some of those safety measures that are included, whether it's like screens along the border walls or whatever it is to help prevent those kinds of things from happening.
Yes, thank you so much for that comment. We have heard that request at other meetings too, and that's very well point. So as we get closer to the design, we would be looking at measures that would discourage exactly what you described. But thank you for that. Zachary?
Thanks, Shilpa, for sharing. I kind of wanted to follow up on Martha's question. I heard you say that 116 feet on the single level bridge clearance in the middle of the river, but I didn't hear an estimate for like bottom and top height of the bridge on the land. So could you share like what some of those potential dimensions are? And then I had a second dimension I was thinking about, which is like side to side, east to west, how wide the double decker, because I'm assuming the double decker will be significantly less wide versus a single level. Like, could you just kind of give us some dimensions of height, base of the bridge up to the top, and width, the narrowest versus the widest?
Okay, I can try, because it's going to vary on the land side. So what we have is the reason we started the 116 is like we know that's the height that we need to hit, the tallest point in the river with the single level, the double level bridge for the river users. So starting from there, it's going to like come down on the Oregon side, and it's going to vary where it lands on the Oregon side. We know as soon as we get to the Oregon side, we do have a roadway, Hayden Island Drive on Hayden Island, that we have to go over. And again, don't have the exact height of it, but we have to stay high enough so we can keep the roadway open, which is usually like between like 20 to 30 feet, depending on the location. Immediately after that, also we have Tomahawk Island Drive. So it's going to be, that's where it's going to kind of like move between like a bridge to a fill area. Just don't have the exact heights at this point, but it's going to be in that range. And on the Vancouver area, it's going to stay higher a little bit more to go over the railroad. The railroad today is already is where it is today, which is about I-5. Then we have to be about the railroad, which again is like 20, 30 feet is where we're looking at. But in general, as we're going down, coming away from the river, we'll be coming down closer to existing I-5 to tie back into existing I-5. So the height is going to vary that way. About the width, so we're looking at what we're looking at for the difference between the double level and single level is where active transportation and transit are located. So we're looking at about, I think I might say this wrong. I think we're about like maybe 20, CRC was looking at 24 feet for active transportation on the bridge itself. And then we have 30, I know I have Matt and here too, we have other teammates. So I can't remember the exact number. It's about 30, how many feet, Frank? I don't know if you remember, for the transit section.
sorry to interrupt, Shilpa, but yeah, it's roughly about 25 to 35 feet wider. And a lot of that's going to depend on the bridge configuration that's ultimately selected.
Great. Thanks, Matt, for that. So that is going to be the difference in width between the single level and double level bridges. Thanks for the help. Gina.
Thank you. I know there's been conversation about how many lanes the bridge would include, and that currently your plans, they were studying 1 auxiliary lane. There's also a study with 2 auxiliary lanes. So I would expect that that would impact the width of the bridge depending on which direction you go. But,
yes.
But part of my question is, what width of lanes are you planning for cars and trucks?
So yes, for your first one, yeah, there's going to be a slight difference between the 1 and 2 aux lanes, and we're studying both of them in the draft SEIS. So they will be in the document when it comes out for public comment. We are looking at 12-foot lanes. Today we have very narrow lanes, 10 to 11-foot lanes, but 12-foot lanes is what we have usually on the interstate, and that's what we're looking at for the bridge.
Perfect.
On the bridge, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zachary, you got one more question?
Sorry, I didn't catch the end of the answer to my question. I heard 24 feet for active transit, 35 feet for transit, but then I didn't hear like a description of how wide the whole project would be in general for those different categories.
Exactly. I'll probably have to get back to you on the exact dimensions of that, especially between the double and single level changes and the differences. Yeah. So probably even if it's a range. Thank you.
That was great. There were lots and lots of questions. If there are any other questions as we kind of move to the next element of our conversation, please feel free to always follow up. We're happy to reach out to the design team and get some answers for you. Next up is a follow-up discussion on the Hayden Island Station. This was a presentation and a discussion that we've had before CAG. We just didn't have a lot of time to actually ask questions and have a dialogue. The set of slides that are here are not new slides, but they're here so that we can go back and reference them if we need to. But I'm going to pass it over to our design team, led by Matt, to go ahead and just open up for questions and comments. And Matt, if you want to, if there's anything that you want to share.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Good to be back with the group again here. I just want to provide a brief reminder of where we are and what we're doing here. So we're going to be looking at some concepts for the Hayden Island Station. I want to reiterate that these are concepts. They are showing some different options, configurations. These do not necessarily reflect what will be built, but what we're really seeking from you all is how do these concepts and the differences best meet or not meet the values that CAG is looking to reinforce in the program. We're also going to want to know what's missing. Have we missed something? Are there some other considerations that we would be thinking about? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nolan and then on to Malin to review the slides.
Great, thanks, Matt. And as Matt said, we have all the content from our last presentation. We're going to click through it very quickly just so that you remember what is in this package. And then as a reference, we can go back to a slide if a question comes up about it. So I'll appreciate all of your patience while we go through this at an unusually quick rate. Next. So we reviewed the community values and priorities that this CAG is using to assess the program. Next. We talked about the fact that this is focused on focus area C, Hayden Island, at the center of it. Next. We reviewed the Hayden Island station area and focus area plan that begins to show the program elements in context with one another and with their surroundings. And then this was the comparison matrix. Broadly, it shows what are the different factors of each station concept A, B, D, and E. I think Malin explained that there's no C here because it's an idea that we began to study and realized that it just wasn't as strong as the other four. And so we began to develop these four and not that item C. And this is another slide we can come back to if it's helpful for people to see. Next. So for each concept, we show one view at the platform level, which basically shows how the transit elements that are up at track level and platform level perform. And then second is a view of the street level. If you click to the next, that shows how do those vertical elements, stairs, ramps, elevators, bike parking, other street level elements fit together, and then how do they relate to surface streets, two-way cycle track, surrounding buildings as we understand them, recognizing that, as Matt said, these are not final design configurations, but rather beginning to understand what our options look like with regard to configuration and what the implications of the different configurations are. Next. So we do the same thing for concept B, which is a center platform. Next. And this is the street level. Next. Concept D, which is another set of side platforms, but shifted to the north. Next. And then what that looks like at the street level as a result. Next. And then concept E is a center platform shifted to the north. Next. And then the street level of that concept. Next. So these are the discussion questions. I think we had about 3 to 4 minutes of discussion before we had to cut off last month. So we were excited at the opportunity to circle back and be able to have a longer conversation and potentially answer more of your questions. I also, before we get into it, want to acknowledge that somebody did say, boy, it would be helpful to see an elevation of all this to be able to, which means looking at it rather than down in a plan view, we would look at it sort of more in a horizontal view, the way that you would look at it if you were standing 100 feet away and looking at it in front of you. And so we weren't able to produce that for this month, but as I mentioned last time, we will put that on the list of things that we will bring back as we develop the concept further. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
And maybe we'll go back to one of the concepts to have probably easier for people to remember what they were looking at. So if we could go back to, why don't we go, go to, I think is it A or B? Because I think this is, this is probably, I'm always careful. We're probably leaning towards recommending something like this as, a whole number of external things or surrounding context things are evolving in the project. But the reason for that is a number of reasons. Some of the things we're looking at is where are, of course, where is our existing locations where people are coming from and going to, but also what do we know about where likely future things will be? And generally on the left, the upper left, the southwest corner, if you will, is the area that will be allowed to have some greater development. There are a lot of restrictions on what can be developed here. TOD, transit-oriented development, you hear. So one reason we kind of like this idea is it locates an entrance to the station on the south side of Tomahawk, on the left side here. And so people coming and going, as that population increases in the future, they don't have to cross Tomahawk, which isn't going to be an excessively busy street, but nonetheless, there'll be regional traffic coming to and from the retail center and so forth. So it'd be kind of nice not to do that. And also that this location here allows us to get a ramp in that elevation drawing that Nolan talked about that we aren't providing, but will. And, this station is about 25 feet tall, something like that. So it's not too bad to go up and down stairs. We'll expect a lot of people use the stairs. But most mobility impaired people will use an elevator. However, it is also nice to have the option to have a ramp. And so there are some challenges with getting a ramp in. And one of the options that makes that the easiest is this option here. And the other thing we're considering when we look at these and that matrix, which is, we'll go through that in more detail when we get into questions if needed and as we progress here. But the, people are not just walking to and from here. They're going to be coming from bikes and cars. There isn't necessarily a bus route allocated for this, but it seemed prudent to kind of plan for some sort of bus connection here. So those are the sort of things we're thinking about.
Great. Well, with that, why don't we go ahead and take some questions? I see Irina with her hand up. Irina.
I don't know if my suggestion is just going to confuse everybody more, but I would benefit if you pick, for example, the handicapped person and tell me his story using your 4 approaches. So if I am in the wheelchair, what would be my preferable scenario of having the station? And the same approach, if I'm the person on the bicycle, what would be my preferred option out of the 4 that you are suggesting for us to review? And basically what I want you to look at the different paths on how these people are going to approach the station, how they're going to use a ramp or use elevator, and maybe also tell me what will be the time for them to get from the ground level to the station level. So if they're planning their trip, which one is going to be kind of like the most efficient, the shortest for them to get? Because this station is supposed to be nice to have for the trains to stop nicely, but also for the humans to use the station and kind of like and enjoy using the public transportation.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I think it's sort of different profiles and
yes, different profiles of the users, and tell me which user would prefer one of these, or maybe there are equal options, which they prefer as the use from the user's perspective.
That's great. So I think we can develop that as we develop the concepts, but really quickly, one of the things we said in the last presentation that we didn't repeat this time is that concept A has a ramp in the light blue here. And so that's how you would get up if you wanted to not use an elevator. So there's an elevator on both sides of Tomahawk in concept A, and then there's a ramp on the south side. And of course, I think if you were using your bike, you could take either of those. If we click 2 slides forward. So on concept B, similarly, there's a ramp on the south side connected to this 2-way cycle track here, and then an elevator on both sides of Tomahawk. And then 2 more slides. And then on concept D, there are 2 elevators, but they're on the same side of Tomahawk Drive. So they're essentially on the same block, if you will. And Malin, if you want to talk about why we have shown the ramp in gray here.
The ramp in gray is just, it's a little bit tighter to get it squeezed in here. It would create a kind of, as it rises up there, it's a little bit more of a visual obstruction. If we go to the next slide. Oh no, I guess it's the slide before the previous slide then. Yeah, that is yeah, I've been trying to remember, Nolan, why it's gray. I think it's a little bit tighter.
The reason is that if you imagine the corner of that ramp, the northwest corner, which would be your top right corner of that ramp, and I don't know if the person who's driving the show can put their mouse on that corner. It's pretty close to the sidewalk. And so you'd have a retaining wall there, and the distance between that retaining wall and the curb would be pretty narrow. And so I think we show it because you could do it, but we put it gray because it creates a environment that is not optimal. It's not ideal. And so we wanted to show, so if someone said, hey, why didn't you do that? This is why we aren't showing that in a bold line like the other concepts. And then if we'll go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and I beg everybody's kind of forgiveness for a bit. We are, we're working just in plan drawings right now and working with the engineers, understanding how things are moving and the options around. So we are starting and have started three-dimensional stuff, which is much easier for everybody to understand how these things are. And, we won't be making final decisions before coming back to you and showing 3D views of at least two of the options with trade-offs and explaining why the reasons why we may be recommending one over another, so you can really get that. So anyway, we understand that it's hard to hard to really get all those relationships from these 2D drawings. And I might explain the two things that we
and real quickly, maybe just take 30 seconds to do that explanation, and we probably have time for one more question, and then we need to move on to the next topic.
Okay.
So
no, I think that's fine.
I think the last piece was just if you click 2 forward from here, concept E also does not have a ramp at all. So that was just the last point we want to make on this question.
And that's sort of the trade-off. There's so many trade-offs. We're trying to find the optimize all the different factors, and so as we really started, this is not form and character. We can't wait to get to the point to talk to you about real design, but this is the bones of these. And it's so the location of the station and the configuration of the station. The location, in this case, generally north or south of Tomahawk. And so we do these drawings to actually flush out what the issues are. And then the configuration is side or center platform. Generally, it's nicer to have a center platform where you can, because you can come directly up to the platform and don't have to cross the tracks, which of course is, happens all the time in the TriMet system. However, if you don't have to, it's an additional level of safety and less concern about security. However, there are some times where the totality of all the issues, it may be easier to have a side platform station. So that's why we're looking at all these things at this point.
Actually, I'd like to add something too, because I can understand these diagrams as well as the visualization that we saw before. There are a lot of details, and we saying right now that we don't have too much detail on the design standpoint, because we're still in the conceptual phase, and we're looking at different options. But as we move forward, especially with the draft SEIS, as we know more which we're drawing it as, we'll be able to start creating more details and design, which hopefully will also help us answer some of the questions that we're getting right now. And we hear you, we hear all the questions, and there are definitely things that we need to consider as we develop design in detail. And there might be other things that we'd also come across as we're getting into the detailed design, but it's been really helpful for us. I know Johnell said we have 30 seconds, but I just want to say I would acknowledge that all this feedback has been really helpful. I know we had other meetings to help us with the design as we move forward too. So thank you for the input.
Great, thank you for that, Shilpa. Okay, thank you, team. With that, we're gonna move on to our workforce presentation, and we've asked both Erica McAlpin from our equity team as well as Kelly Haynes from Work Systems Inc. To update all of you on the workforce study that the program conducted. So with that, I'll turn it over to Erica and Kelly.
Thanks, Johnell. We could go to the next slide, please. So the regional workforce study was developed or commissioned because we are looking for a skilled and diverse workforce that's ready to meet the challenges of the future, which is critical to the IBR program's success. The program is actively engaged in identifying strategies to improve workforce readiness. So the program commissioned workforce development boards to conduct a comprehensive regional workforce market study. And the study was conducted by Workforce Southwest Washington, Clackamas Workforce Partnership, and Work Systems. This study is a key step in understanding the potential gaps in the current and projected workforce needed to support infrastructure projects in the region over the next 5 years. And it identifies opportunities for consideration that could support efforts to help ensure that equitable economic and workforce development occurs. Next slide. So as mentioned, the research team was local workforce development boards, and they were joined by Dr. Maura Kelly from Portland State University, Oregon Employment Department, regional economists, as well as Estelano advisors. Next slide. So an overview of the study is, it was a survey of labor demand forecasts for regional public capital projects over $15 million over the next 5 years. The inventory of current labor supply, including an analysis of registered apprentices, focus groups, surveys, interviews with industry stakeholders also occurred, and then professional technical engineering occupations were considered as well. And now I will turn it over to Kelly Haynes from Work Systems to discuss the methodology and recommendations.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Kelly Haynes. My pronouns are she, her, and like Erica said, I work for Work Systems, which is the local workforce board that serves Washington and Multnomah counties. It looks like it's just going through timed here, so maybe we can go back to.
Yeah, whoever's controlling the slides, you're going too fast. If we can go back to that prior slide here. So keep going back.
We could go to, yeah, so to the overview slide. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. So like Erica said, I'll just jump in here. So this study was commissioned by the Oregon Department of Transportation and the Washington State Department of Transportation for the I-5 Bridge Replacement Program. And it really was building upon prior research from 2018, but this is a much needed report that updates regional data that will help local policymakers and electeds have a clear picture of the regional workforce equity needs for green-lighted public infrastructure work. Next slide. So how did we do it? We used both extensive quantitative and qualitative methods. This included collecting and analyzing existing available construction, as well as professional, technical, and engineering, or PTE workforce supply. If you could go back to the prior slide, it might be on a timer.
Yeah, it looks like it might be.
Oh, yeah, so the methodology one, great. And then I'll just tell you when to go to the next slide, if that works. Oh, but go back. So stay on that slide.
Yeah, so maybe just get it out of this particular view. If we're having issues there, and just show just you know, the full view, because there might be some timing issues within the slides.
Yeah, it's probably on a timer.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Okay. Where are we at, team? Do we? Okay, here we go.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Okay. Yeah, let's just keep it there.
Okay, yeah. Great. Thank you all. Okay, so I'll just get through this slide and I'll tell you when to go. Okay, so our methodology included collecting and analyzing existing available labor market data, forecasting the local 5-year workforce demand, conducting extensive interviews with public agencies, contractors, apprenticeship programs, unions, and pre-apprenticeship programs, and also holding focus groups with diverse construction workers and supervisors in the region. The research sought to uncover the major barriers to achieving equity and increasing diversity in the construction and the PTE workforce for the Portland, Vancouver, Hillsborough Metropolitan Statistical Area, or the Portland MSA. A set of recommendations for success are outlined and described in the report. Next slide. So it's important to also highlight, oh, hold on just a second. Sorry, it's the evening and my kid just came in. It looks like there is a slide missing, so I'll just verbally say it. There are caveats that we want to make sure we articulate, and they're also outlined in the report. So that will be published that you can read about. But I'll just verbally say there are limitations of the study due to data availability, as well as assumptions used in the analysis that we're clear on in the study itself. So our approach was informed by utilizing national staffing patterns, labor data on past projects, and then ground truthing these with local contractors and their estimating staff. We know that different types of projects will require different types of trades. So we developed staffing pattern profiles for 20 different types of capital projects. For example, we know that light rail is going to take a different grouping of trades than a data center or a hospital or a bridge. And so we overlaid those staffing patterns onto the list of projects to develop forecasted need by trade. And we also used the average of apprenticeship and diversity goals for those agencies who reported having them. And then we overlaid those onto all projects for all trades. So we'll stay on this slide, and now I'll move into the content of this one. So for the existing workforce, we found that 43,000 people currently work in the trades in the Portland MSA. 5% identify as women, and roughly 26% identify as people of color. We detail out these data by racial and gender category in the report, but one highlight is that Latin workers are overrepresented, and especially in the lower paying trades. There is underrepresentation for Black and Asian workers. There are also clear wage equity trends in the trades. Both women and people of color consistently are concentrated in lower paying occupations. Next slide. So for our demand side analysis, we found that from 2023 through at least 2028, the 107 known large capital public projects identified by this study will require over 22,000 construction workers. Some of these projects have apprenticeship and workforce diversity utilization goals, with average goals of 17% apprentices, 21% people of color, and 11% women. When diversification and workforce deficits are added together by trade, this analysis shows that the current supply would fall short by nearly 300 people of color, over 1,000 females, and nearly 1,300 apprentices to fill the needs for all trades in the region over the next 5 years. These deficits show the deep need for additional outreach to training and retention of underrepresented groups for skilled trade career opportunities. Also, an estimate nearly 6,000 PTE workers will be needed. As with the trades, these positions may be filled by a combination of the existing workforce and new entrants. And 3 of those PTE occupations rise to the top as accounting for over half of the total demand, which are office clerks, project management specialists, and civil engineers. Next slide. So this chart also shows the broader context of this study. This is the overall construction labor demand that's larger than what was included in this scope. This analysis that we conducted is detailed and systematic, but the projected demand included is only those green-lighted public capital projects over 15 million that were captured through our interviews. So this analysis does not include private work, public projects under 15 million, or any data that may not have been disclosed. On this slide is a chart that illustrates the broader construction spending, and the source of this is through the Oregon Employment Department and national data. So we wanted to ensure to provide this broader context within our analysis. So for these reasons, there is significant demand in the region for construction workers outside of the scope. But this analysis likely includes most of the projected demand for apprentices, workers of color, and female workers in the region, because utilization goals for these types of workers primarily exist for public capital projects and are rarely present in the private market. But it doesn't mean that apprentices, women, and people of color aren't employed everywhere. And so public sector projects will still need to compete with other markets for this workforce. Next slide. On the qualitative side, with our extensive focus groups and interviews, we found that retention of diverse workers is adversely affected by lower quality training. These workers often receive on the job site from supervising journey persons, which means that these apprentices are less included in the trades and struggle to excel and advance. Harassment remains a significant issue as well on job sites. This includes harassment based on gender, race, and other identities, harassment of apprentices, and disrespect often experienced by all workers. Workers also experience isolation and exclusion, and this impacts the industry's ability to retain current workers and recruit future workers. The industry has not yet widely adopted policies and practices that effectively address job site harassment and discrimination incidents. Women and people of color are less likely to have opportunities for advancement within the industry, such as becoming foreperson superintendents or company owners. Additional support is needed related to the transition from apprentice to journey level. Also, real-life financial hardships or unexpected life situations often arise, especially for early-term apprentices who may have limited to no savings, which can be enough to prevent them from continuing with their careers. Additionally, the lack of steady work in the construction industry particularly can impact female workers and workers of color. There are often studies have shown that these workers work far fewer hours annually than their white male counterparts. Also, the cost of childcare and access to childcare, especially for non-standard shifts that often happen in the trades, are a barrier to success for parents in the industry. And lastly, requirements for long shifts, changing schedules, or non-standard work hours without options for flexibility can pose challenges for workers, especially those with caregiving needs. Next slide. So this is just kind of closing out some of the summary of the barriers to diversifying. Most connections into apprenticeships still occur through personal referrals, which women and people of color are less likely to experience, and outreach that is done by word of mouth is rarely targeted specifically toward marginalized communities. One really good set of organizations that have helped over the years nationally and locally are state certified pre-apprenticeship programs. They have a really good track record of connecting historically underrepresented populations to the trades, screen them for job readiness, and to help cultivate a pipeline. However, these programs have limited capacity due to funding sustainability concerns, and not having a more sustained or streamlined funding model for pre-apprenticeship programs is a barrier for better and increased recruitment. And lastly, the majority of public projects in the Portland metro area do not have workforce participation goals. And those that do have goals struggle with monitoring and enforcing them. Agencies reported that staff, time, and cost could be barriers to implementing and upholding goals. Next slide. So based on the research findings, here are the recommended regional actions for diversifying the construction and the professional, technical, and engineering workforce. 1, grow a diverse regional construction workforce through multi-jurisdictional collaboration, coordination, and targeted investments. So make the intentional choice to build up the regional workforce by joining forces with existing successful regional efforts. This can include the Construction Career Pathways Framework, which nearly, I think it's about a dozen local agencies have already signed on to, and they've made some very good progress on the work to ensure advancement in a multi-jurisdictional and a regional approach to addressing these issues. Embed equity goals into all workforce agreements. The Regional Workforce Equity Agreement can be a model that the City of Portland Metro and Multnomah County now have applied to over $2 billion worth of work in the region. And our friends in Washington also have very good examples in the City of Seattle, the Port, King County, and Sound Transit all have a history of working together to collaborate on workforce equity agreements, including project labor agreements. 2, improve retention through addressing job site culture and other challenges. So mandate that contractors commit to actively improve job site culture by establishing zero tolerance policies, robust reporting mechanisms, and a consistent implementation of proven positive work environment training. Invest in project level retention support to keep skilled workers and provide flexibility in work hours to address workers' caregiving and health needs. 3, knock down the barriers that women and workers of color face to grow a skilled workforce. So join, again, multi-jurisdictional existing efforts. There's a construction careers funder collaborative that many of the local agencies have been helping to actually scale up regional workforce investments to ensure that we have stability with our community-based partners, with our pre-apprenticeship programs to cultivate and build a robust pipeline of diverse job seekers. And including that, I think making affordable, accessible, reliable, and high quality childcare a priority investment and a signature community benefit. 4, implement effective project administration and procurement strategies. So this is really the how of agreements and things that are put on paper. It's important to establish and effectively plan for the needs to establish things like labor management community oversight committees and other implementation tables that really help to monitor progress and ensure resolution of any challenges throughout the life of the project. 5, increase communication and education for project managers and contractors. It's critical to ensure that project managers who engage with contractors really understand the value and how to communicate with subcontractors about the requirements, about workforce agreements, and how to truly implement well. And then the last one is really to continue to explore a lot of the best practices that we know work well in the trades could be better applied to career opportunities in the PTE workforce. Talking to higher education partners in this study, we know that there's a lot of opportunity to increase the diversity of graduates from these degree programs to ensure a pipeline of more diverse PTE professionals. So those are our recommendations. I'd be happy to turn it back over to Erica and open it up for any questions.
Thanks, Kelly. Before we take questions, I'll go over our next steps. So the next steps are to publish the workforce study to the IBR website, which is expected in March, and then you'll be able to find the full report. This study is one important step to inform efforts as the program continues to develop specific workforce strategies. It provides the foundation to understand the current and anticipated future state of the workforce and opportunities to help promote equitable growth in the region's economy. We will also analyze these recommendations to identify potential program actions, and we are developing an action plan for implementation. So now we'll be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Kelly and Erica. And we'll go with Irina, Martha, and then Sam.
Okay, my name was called first, so I have a question about the timeline when you are going to come up with the suggestions that you mentioned as your tasks.
So we are currently working to finalize a workforce equity program plan as well as an outreach plan. And we should have those items ready and come back to you to talk about probably in April. If not April, definitely May.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Martha and then Sam.
Yeah, on that one table that you, at the beginning, you said that for these projects, which you identified as being bigger than so much, there were, I can't remember the number exactly, 23,000 workers or was that 23,000 people needed for that job, for those projects? Because what I'm not understanding is you found a lot of information about the trades and how many employees there are in those various elements of that. But I want to know how many are going to be needed. So if you talked about how many women and people of color and so on are needed to meet particular goals, but I want to know about the total. If there's just going to be, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting confused about what I'm trying to say here, but you talked about a specific element of the number of workers that are going to be needed. And I understand that there's a need for specific categories of people, But I want to know how many people altogether, how many workers altogether are going to be needed for these projects, and how many we have now, and is there's going to be enough workers from, I don't know. Sorry,
I'm happy to answer that. And I do think I understand what you're saying. So I'll try to answer and then let me know if I've helped answer your question.
Thank
Does that
you.
sound good? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And I will just say workforce is a moving target. People constantly move in and out of this region. There's a lot there. And so we have to kind of put a stake in the ground with this kind of research. So we were able to pull labor market data at a point in time. We cannot, say we know how many electricians will be in existence in 3 years. So what we can do is say our current supply is X. And what we know is the 5-year forecasted demand is Y. And so I think that's kind of where we landed. The report is, we're hoping to post it this week. I believe, I think we're pretty close to doing that. So you can also pour through the 60 pages that we wrote, but to help answer your question, at a high level, for the 107 projects that were part of our survey and our analysis based on that 15 million and above, we found that it's going to need at least 22,000 construction workers. And then when looking at labor market data and current supply, we know that there are a little over 40,000 in the non-residential market. But a lot of those people are most likely currently working. So it's, again, very hard to know what that's where it's hard to know, like, what's the gap, because we know that also the people who are in our current supply are not all unemployed. So it's sort of a challenge, if that makes sense, but that's kind of the high level numbers. So what we can kind of plan for what we know, and that's for all 107 projects. That includes the IVR program. So hopefully that's helpful information. Does that help answer your question?
It does, but then you had a table that was including, you had residential, you had
private,
and then you had public. And those projects, I mean, you're projecting out so many millions of dollars of investment in those projects over some period of time. I mean, much longer than just now. And so will there be enough workers for all of those projects combined is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and that was not within the scope of this study that we were commissioned for, but I'm happy to talk more offline. And I think that is something we could probably have our regional economists from the state help to maybe provide a deeper answer for you. But I think our goal in providing that table was to provide, to your point, that's the broader demand of the universe of trades, construction work in Oregon. And that's sort of data we wanted to make sure we included exactly for that reason. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. We'll go to Sam and then Jenna.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Erica and Kelly. This was a great report. I look forward to the study being published in March or later this month, I guess. Is that what you said? I think that's what you said.
Yes, later this month.
Okay. So I wish Darcy Hoffman was here. I think she's from Workforce Southwest Washington. She's part of the local Workforce Development Board. And I'm an employee of Employment Service Department, ESD.
Yeah.
And so was ESD part of the 19 public agencies that were involved in the study, or did they not participate?
So Darcy was on our research team and she couldn't make it today, but she was a critical part. So she worked with us. And we had Scott Bailey from ESD, I think, helping a little bit, if that name sounds familiar, as one of the economists before he retired.
Yeah, I think he's retired from in the Southwest Washington. Okay. And then you said for recommendation number 1, grow a diverse regional construction workforce through multi-jurisdictional collaboration, coordination, and targeted investments. So who's going to lead that? How's that going to happen? I mean, it's one thing to make the recommendation, but is there a will? I mean, is there like funding? And it seems like, yeah, we have these dreams and yet things crash and burn because there's no will or funding.
Yeah, I mean, can answer from what I know, and there's more detail in the report, but I can't speak on behalf of IVR, but I do know, and that's why we wanted to highlight existing work in the region. So I don't think there's as many examples at this point with Southwest Washington partners like CTRAN and others, but I think that we wanted to make sure to articulate that there has been a will and a lot of effort on behalf of a lot of the regional public agencies in this construction career pathways framework. So we just wanted to make sure that there was awareness for this program and for the funders of the research project that there is existing efforts underway, but there's still a lot of work to do. So that's why we said join forces, so we can all kind of keep the momentum going toward what we're seeing are actually realizing some pretty good outcomes on a lot of public projects locally right now.
Okay, I look forward to the full report. I may have more questions after that. Thank you.
Great.
Jana?
Thank you. I'm only recently gotten very familiar with the workforce boards. The trucking industry has been short of drivers historically. Nationally, we're about 80,000 drivers short, even though trucking is suffering through a trucking recession right now. We're still severely short of drivers. And so one of the things that we have discovered, or I have discovered since I took this role with OTA, is there's a lot of transition between our driver workforce and the construction industry, depending on which industry is doing better at the time. And so in some of your numbers, your calculations about need, if you've got two industries that are understaffed, you have a larger problem than if you just have one industry that's understaffed, because traditionally when construction was up, sometimes trucking was down, so drivers would shift over. But just to add that dimension to your analysis is something I was wanting you to consider.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions or comments from members of CAG? Jana, did you have another comment? Oh, no. Okay.
Sorry, forgot to take my hand down. Sorry.
All right. Well, seeing or hearing none, thank you both Kelly and Erica for that thorough presentation. And as they've indicated, more is to come. We'll ensure that you all are made aware when that report is published, as well as the team will be coming before this body as the program further refines and develops how it will respond in terms of some of the recommendations. So this is just the beginning of that dialogue. Great. Team, could you tell me if we have folks sign up for public comment?
It looks like we have one signed up.
Okay, great. I'll go through the public comments here in just a second, but first I'll go to our what's next. Next slide, please. Just a reminder that we have a number of upcoming advisory group meetings. We have our equity advisory group meeting on Monday, March 18th from 5:30 to 7:30. And then we have our community benefits advisory group meeting on March 28th from 9:30 to 11:30. Next slide. Now we'll enter into our public comment. Next slide, please. Just a reminder for those wishing to make a public comment, live comment via phone, you will want to dial 1-646-931-3860 or 1-408-638-0968. You'll want to include the meeting ID number 986-0940-5983 and the passcode, which is 701376. Please remember to dial *9 to raise your hand. I'll call on you. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself. Please provide your name and affiliation. We'll have roughly 10 minutes that will be divided by the folks who are here to participate. If we run out of time and you have not had a chance to speak, you can still provide comments after the meeting. Next slide, please. To submit comments after the meeting, you may fill out the comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with CAG Public Comment in the subject line. You can also call 360-859-0494 for our Washingtonians 503-897-9218 for our Oregonians. And then, of course, the toll-free number 1-888-503-6735. Please do state CAG public comment in your message. Written comments need to explicitly say CAG public comment in the subject line or in the body of the message for them to be identified and distributed to CAG members. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. Next slide, please. So with that, we'll, if you can tell me, Lauren, how many folks we have signed up?
We only have one.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and admit our public commentor? Okay, are you with us? Bob, is it Bob, we see you? Okay, Bob, welcome to CAG. We'll start your time now.
Okay, you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm Bob Wortblatt, a civil engineer and for 40 years.
Okay.
And a resident of Washington State.
You with us?
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, very good. Let me just comment on the.
It's Bob, we see you. Okay, Bob, welcome to CAG. We'll start your time now. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Hey, Lauren, let's stop things for a second.
Civil engineer and
Bob, we're getting feedback. If you can turn your TV down.
Hang on a second. I got to turn the other one off.
Yes, okay.
Very good. Let me just comment on the.
It's Bob, we see you. Okay, Bob, welcome to CAG. We'll start your time now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I had my Zoom on. You hear me now?
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Okay, sorry, I forgot to turn my Zoom off.
That's okay. We're going to start your clock now, Bob. Go ahead.
Let's start again. Okay, let's start again. I'm Bob Wortblatt, a civil engineer for 40 years and a resident of Washington State. I just wanted to comment on the river crossing visualizations. To date, the IBR has spent $120 million. Basically, I think the visualizations are pretty amateurish compared to that type of expenditure. They don't show the perspective of the grade. It would be one of the steepest bridges in the country. It would be the steepest bridge in the country. It doesn't show the S-curve coming off into Vancouver, which makes this bridge very dangerous. It doesn't show the massive scale. This thing is going to be literally as wide as a football field is long, 100 yards wide on both Hayden Island and Vancouver, and for about a half a mile on both sides. It doesn't show the pedestrian or bike ramp. They're pretty lacking, frankly, for the amount of money that's been expended so far. I think the IBR's intentionally basically kept a lot of this stuff under wraps because the more you see of it, the more awful it gets. Basically, there is a much better, cheaper, more environmental, faster to build alternative, but the IBR continues to lie about an immersed tunnel alternative. It should be in the EIS. I think the EIS will fail if they do not put that alternative in. They're being built. The ones being built up in Vancouver right now. There's being built all over the world. The river is very shallow. It's much more earthquake resistant and much more environmentally friendly. You don't have the horrible, huge approaches on both banks. You can actually have waterfront parks. So that's my quick comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bob. Lauren, do we have anyone else signed up?
No, it was just Bob.
Okay, so with that, I would like to ask both our chair, Valenter, as well as Mr. Chair Ed Washington to close us out. But prior to doing that, I just want to note for CAG members that we will be canceling our April meeting to prepare. The team needs more time to prepare conceptual design of the remaining 2 transit stations. And so as we made a commitment to all of you, we will never bring you together if we don't have a lot of substance to discuss. And so in that vein, we'll plan to bring you all back in May. So with that, Lynn and Ed, we'll turn it over to you to close us out.
Well, I just want to acknowledge that we got an awful lot of information and had great opportunity for questions. So allowing some time for people to ask, because we're getting into where the details matter. And I know for all of us, it's probably, we're looking for more detail that we can get at any given moment, but we continue to get more information. So I just want to thank those of us that are here today for attending when the weather outside is absolutely glorious. And I also just want to say that the project team has been and is on kind of a dead sprint to meet the deadlines for submission of the supplemental EIS documents. And so I just want to say thank you to them, because I know it's full speed ahead for everyone that's a part of it. So appreciate it. I would also just note that the executive steering group, which Ed and I both participate in, actually stopped meeting for almost 6 months, I think 5 months maybe, for different reasons. But so certainly pausing when we our time can be better served with more data down the road makes great sense. So thanks to everyone. Ed, additional comments?
Ed, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I always forget to unmute, but I think I said enough earlier, but in closing, really appreciate all of you being here today. And this was a very, very interesting meeting. And I think I have received comments from people, several people who saw the drawings in the paper. So I think we're taking that next big step. And so you all have, I just want to say, have a good rest of the evening. From where I'm sitting, the sun is shining. So get out there and enjoy some of it. Okay, that's all.
And Frank, I want to see if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm off camera, running to my son's birthday party, but wanted to just say thank you for the continued commitment. I think from this advisory group, I really appreciated, as Lynn had said, the engagement tonight. I think we got a lot of good questions. We really enjoy the participation of everyone from this group, and so I want to say thank you to the ASL interpreters as well. I know. Sometimes like when I'm speaking, I probably go a little fast. So appreciate the work you do there. And just as everyone else said, I hope everyone can enjoy the evening and the good weather that I think is supposed to be starting to come. So once again, thank you very much and appreciate, as always, these conversations.
Great. Well, thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful evening. And yes, please go outside and enjoy this rare thing we actually have, which is called sun. We never see that in this part. So anyways, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.